Oh, welcome back to episode 3. Oh my gosh, we're live. We were just talking about, you know what? Let's talk about CERN. There's a lot of things that are coming up in today's world that just feels like we're living almost in like a hologram, like it's a movie, like we're in a strip, like we were talking about. Remember in episode 1, we talked about Shakespeare a little bit and how the incorporation of Shakespeare saying, hey, we're in this theater of life and we're all in the same play and we're all actors in this big theater of life, right? And so, you know, we were talking about a little bit in episode 1, brought up Revelations and all this kind of stuff. And I think it's fascinating. I think it's chapter 2, maybe verse 16, somewhere in there, where it talks about Antipas knowing about where Satan dwelled, which is technically, I think they call it Geneva, Switzerland, today's world. And back then, they would say that's the throne of Apollo. And I think Apollo means, you know, the destroyer of worlds. So it's kind of ironic that we've got CERN, which is a hydrogen collider, hundreds of feet underneath the ground. Miles and miles of these tunnels that, oddly enough, make a 666. So, I mean, there's some kind of symbology there going on. Like we live in some kind of algorithmic hologram, some kind of matrix system. Mm-hmm. And even in the Bible, it says the matrix 5 times. And so you said that, you served your mission in France. You speak Portuguese. Have you ever been, speak French. Speak French.
I want to speak some Portuguese.
Yeah, we can speak Portuguese all day. I do speak Portuguese, but French is very, very similar. So going back to living in France, were you ever able to see the Tower of Babel that they put in CERN? It's in between Switzerland and France.
No, but I do have some close friends that live in Switzerland, and it's one of my objectives to go visit them and make my way to where you're talking. Yes, for sure. No, I predominantly spent my time in France.
You spoke to Freemasons, stuff like that. Did you get any correlation or any kind of like hint that maybe they know something they're not telling you?
I think they like to allude that they were a little bit more intelligent or this or that than I was. But my interactions over there with Masons compared to what I have here in America, I feel like there has personally been a little disconnect from the ones that I had met compared to even the knowledge that is even here locally where we both live.
Right.
I think they're not as serious of a Mason as we might even find here.
Oh.
But I'm just throwing that out.
So maybe like old world Mason knowledge.
I think
gnosis, they call it. They like to say the G actually doesn't stand for grand architect. It actually stands for gnosis, or even in third degree, generative principle.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing that there's still a lot there of certain principles of knowledge. But I think a lot of it has probably transferred to hopefully good people more here in America.
Yeah.
Than what is probably being practiced or whatever over there.
Well, it's okay. So you're bringing in America, old world, new world Masonry, right?
Yep.
They say back in Stanford, I don't know, it's maybe around the 70s or 80s as it goes, right when the internet was created, oddly enough. And so they say that Stanford made a little CERN, which is basically a hydrogen collider. They take like this massive gymnasium that wasn't being utilized. And the scientist was like, oh my gosh, let's make this massive collider. We're going to spin around 2 hydrogen particles and mash them into each other as close to the speed of light as possible.
Right.
He did that, and wow, it worked.
Right.
What worked? We end up learning, they talk about like the God particle. If we were to bring in the Da Vinci Code and all this fun conspiracy stuff, well, they took that concept and then they threw trillions of dollars at it. Built these underground tunnels that are just massive. You can drive semis through them. And then they collide these hydrogen atoms into each other. And the energy that it's supposed to give off is supposed to be almost considered a 0-point energy, which means you put a little bit of energy in and the energy you get out is multiple times that of the energy in. So they call it kind of a 0-point energy. So pretty cool, right? So this Mandela Effect. Have you ever heard of that before?
Heard it. I'm not too caught up on it, but obviously you bring it up. I know way more than I do.
I think some of the viewers that are watching us right now, they probably know more than we do. But a quick, let's call it a TikTok video or something, would kind of go like this. They got this movie that's called Shazam. It's crazy.
I've seen this.
Sinbad. Yeah, but in theory, it never happened. So what are they doing?
I remember it happened.
I remember it. So if we were to watch Sinbad right now here on the television, we're going to see a scene where they talk about Monopoly, where the guy that had like the
little micro thing.
The little thing that he puts on his eyes called the
monocle.
Monocle. There you go. And so he has a monocle. Well, the new one never had a monocle. You got Fruit of the Loom that has the cornucopia, which is almost like a basket-looking thing with a fruit.
Mm-hmm.
According to Fruit of the Loom, it never existed, right? So those are just a couple really easy examples, right? Even the Bearstein Bears, it was EIN, and now they say it's AIN. And so you're sitting here wondering, almost questioning reality or existence, right? Mm-hmm. As if, wow, am I going crazy? Or are we running with some kind of parallel universe? And so it brings down to CERN and what CERN does. And one of the things that they said, even Stephen Hawking said, he said, be careful with CERN. We don't know what's going to happen. When you take two hydrogen atoms, you collide them at the speed of light, it can create a black hole that will actually move us from a parallel universe, from our universe, into a parallel universe, which goes back into string theory. There's like thousands of different parallel universes, and it almost shifted us off the tracks, where we're living the same life that we think, but it's a little bit different. Does that make sense? What's your thoughts on that? You think that's even feasible? It's like a Star Wars kind of technology.
I think everything is feasible. That's for sure. I've always thought maybe there's an alternate one of me somewhere out there, which is crazy to think, because I'm like, why would someone want to be me?
Right.
Or you or whatever it is. But I think those theories are definitely out there, and I fortunately think there's a reason for the theory. There's probably some truth behind it, but we have to treat it as sci-fi.
Right.
That's not true.
Right.
It's just like much
what
Hollywood does.
So here's kind of like the solid. Let's talk about the evidence then.
Mm-hmm.
They call it a Mandela Effect for Nelson Mandela, which in theory, even in the actual video of Shazam, that theoretically never existed, but somebody ended up finding a copy. Who knows how that came about? But at the end of the day, it has a scene in there, and it shows a newspaper that says Nelson Mandela assassinated, I believe it was 1989. Well, if you look at current day events, he died just within a decade or 2 decades ago. I don't know exactly that date.
I think he got locked up in like late 80s or something like that. And then he died, I don't know, it's been like 15, 20 years.
So there's books written about his assassination. And if you got somebody writing books about his assassination, and then you're saying it never happened, okay, what's going on here?
Right.
That's like men never being able to play in women's sports, and now men are playing in women's sports. So it's like we're living parallel, but slightly different, especially in current day events. You can't make this stuff up.
No,
that's going on. And you could say, okay, it's Mandela Effect. It's not Mandela Effect. It doesn't matter. There's something happening, just like it talks about in the scriptures that we were talking about earlier in episode 1, that you've got this alignment in Job chapter 38, 31, 33, where there's the stars and the moons and everything has its time and season according to Pleiades, Arcturus, which is like the Big Dipper. You've got the Mazareth, which is the 26,000 year cycle of the earth, and everything has its time and season. 2 Peter 3:8, it talks about one day to God is as if 1,000 years unto man. And they say that the earth spins 1,000 miles an hour. How do they know that? And then we got the Mazareth, which is 26,000 years, so 1,000 miles. So basically 26 days to God. So is time and space irrelevant? And that's what we want to talk about in our episode.
Oh, time. We definitely talk about time.
We talk about this all day, but let's talk about that in episode 4. I'd love to have you back, and we'll go from there, and say hi to the family for me, and talk to you later.
Sounds good.
Thanks. Cheers.